Both freaks me out, actually. Yoga, I find kind of looking around the room, okay, what's next? Where do I put my leg now? And I can't concentrate. I can't get into the zone. And I don't have a zen within me that kind of wants to zen into the yoga.
Yeah. Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name's Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter. And today Joe's interviewing Faye Watts of Fuse Accountants LLP. Faye was recommended to Joe, or should it be the other way around, and Joe was recommended to Faye? I'm not sure. By an earlier podcast guest from number 2, Paula Gardner. So they didn't actually know each other before the interview, but found a number of areas of joint interest as they went along. Faye Watts is one of the founding partners of Fuse Accountants, where she assists clients with tax planning and businesses development. Faye has been advising clients for over 15 years and is experienced working with a broad client base. Having worked herself since her early 20s, she has developed a strong commercial and open-minded outlook and frequently writes about business and taxation matters for various publications. Faye also sits on various advisory boards and loves to help businesses flourish. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Faye Watts from Fuse Accountants. Hi Faye, thanks for joining me.
Hi Joe.
Great to have you here. So start by telling me a bit about you, what you do and where you do it.
Sure. I'm a tax specialist and I run my own accountancy practice. I've been in the profession for about 15 years. Left the corporate world even, completely about 5 years ago to set up on my own. And initially it was to have a bit more work-life balance. But of course, as time's progressed and I've built the practice up, brought on another staff, got another partner on board, I've inevitably grown the practice and found it harder to have a bit more work-life balance and ended up, working full-time again. But at least I don't have that sort of corporate-ness behind me, and I very much enjoy what I do. And there you go. I'm set.
So you said, I very much enjoy what I do. If you want to carry on from there, I'll cut that bit out if you want. Let's go back to the question now. This is okay. I very much enjoy what I do. I'm a very dedicated worker, so I've always found it hard to sort of slow down and take a breather. So the work-life balance didn't come very easy to me. My instinct was to go back to work and work full time. But at least working for myself, there's lots of room for sort of fun, personality, and able for me to live a normal life. So as corporate as it sounds, being in tax, it's actually very fun and energetic and enjoyable. Lovely, great. And where do you do it? Where are you based, or what?
Based up in Highgate Village full time, but I often work from home. So I spend at least one day a week working from home, and I'm just a little bit outside of North London. So I have a very nice, easy commute. I gave up life in central London to work very much in leafy North London. Again, so work life could become a bit more enjoyable.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about your morning routine. I guess it'll be different depending on whether you're in the office or at home, or maybe it won't. So tell us a bit about how that runs.
Well, I have to stick to a routine because I'm rubbish otherwise. And if I don't, I don't keep my day on track. Fortunately, my husband will just give me, a nudge in the morning because I'm absolutely useless at getting ready and getting myself out the door. And that's my biggest weakness. Once I'm up and I'm ready and I'm out, I have quite a lot of self-discipline and kind of get my day going. I schedule everything I do. So I tend to schedule, I have a routine in the mornings, I catch up on emails. Then I always make sure before lunch I work on one job to get it out the door. So that might be a client's tax return, some accounting, some advice, whatever that might be. I make sure my days are productive. Then sort of ensure that I've kind of stuck to my goals. It doesn't always go like that. It's sort of, imagine that graph that just goes nice and steady, but actually there's loads of pitfalls and loads of kind of things that happen on the way. There's always a phone call, there's always something urgent that comes along, so things don't always go as planned, but I'm very much about the discipline and scheduling things in your diary. So as long as it's booked in the diary, then it has to get done. And I also schedule my calls as a result.
Okay. I was going to say, I really like the idea of getting the one job before lunch done out of the door, as you put it. So that's sort of your big things, or the things that are earning you money, I guess, particularly the proper sort of fee earning side of things.
Exactly, it's fee earning things, work that I sort of make sure that I get done, whether it produces a fee at that point in time, but the thing is that it's going towards the fee earning of that for that client, and it's actual work rather than perhaps other stuff that could, I think, easily, busyness that could easily distract you. And also with my phone calls, that might be a phone call as well. I tend to schedule phone calls with clients for half an hour if I know that they want to discuss something in detail, rather than get into the habit of allowing phone calls to interrupt the day and then you lose momentum. So again, I'll tend to book a phone call, whether it's in the morning or the afternoon, that I know that somebody wants to discuss something again, and that's part of our sort of the fee earning work, rather than it be ad hoc.
And so does the routine differ when you're not actually leaving the house, so those days when you do work from home?
No, it doesn't. Apart from the fact that I probably work first thing in my pyjamas. Other than that, I don't like distractions in terms of when I'm at work. So I think when you're working, it's important not to use the time to put the washing on in between, or decide to do an hour's of ironing. I think it's key that when you're working, no matter what environment you're in, that you still have dedicated time slots, so that I know that maybe I start work on Wednesday a little bit later because I'm working from home. I don't have to get up as early, but I still have that clear deadline that I want to get a piece of work done, and that I clear my emails first thing. So nothing really changes in that sense. And again, home, I won't work with a TV on. I won't kind of allow distractions of being at home. That's more a sort of comfort and a silence, rather than the idea of being at home as a kind of I can do other things, if that makes sense.
And you mentioned sort of leaving the corporate world to have more flexibility and then ending up growing your business so you're working sort of full-time again. So has that evolved? Were you less structured to begin with and realised that you needed to be?
Yes, exactly that. So I started very regimented. We had timesheets in the corporate world, and you have to fulfil your 7 hours a day, and a lot more than that in real terms. Yeah. And I sort of went to do a little bit of consultancy, and I was doing ad hoc work, and I thought, okay, this is great. I could see my mum, I could go shopping, I could, do all the things I wanted to do and have a bit of downtime. But actually, you find that the day just floats along, and you don't get things done. And I'm quite a workaholic, and I needed that discipline. I needed to get back to going, okay, I've got diarised appointments, I've got things to do, I've got commitments to clients, I've got deadlines. And I think I needed that, and that's what sort of drove me back. But I still, the difference is now for my work-life balance, when I go home, that's it, time out. I have a personal trainer that I train with twice a week, and I do that within working hours. So I have a 9 a.m. on a Friday morning and a 5 p.m. on a Monday evening. And the point of that is they're in working hours because they really are a disciplined time of my day. They're an appointment that I can't reschedule, so that my evening time is my evening time. And I have a very clear line between what is work and what is life.
I really need to listen to that. I don't have clear lines. I'm very poor at that. But then I justify it to myself the other way, which is that I do get to do some of the things in the day that I want to do, but then I have to sort of push things into the evening. And
I think that's a fair compromise. And of course, I'm not perfect, and I do the same. And if there are things and other errands I need to run on my Wednesday, I kind of will compensate that by doing something either later into the day or working, not so much, I won't push myself in the hours, but I just make sure that the time spent is dedicated and I don't allow myself to pussyfoot around and do bits and pieces of nothing. I try to have that discipline that, okay, for sort of like as a reward or as compensation for Wednesday afternoon, I had to buy a sink a few weeks ago. So
you know how to live, don't you?
Exactly, exciting. So in that time, I booked out, okay, that time I've got to go and buy this sink, and of course I'm out of the office. But rather than going, well, okay, I've taken 3 hours off and I've got to make 3 hours up, it was, what would I have done in that afternoon? Okay, I'll make sure I get that done on Thursday. And then stick to sort of realistic goals rather than it just being, okay, I've got to work myself to the ground, because what's the point of owning your business if you're just going to work yourself to the ground?
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about how you manage your tasks and your to-do lists and your time. You've obviously talked about scheduling things being very important to you and that focus.
Yeah.
What else do you do?
Well, I use, I diarise everything wherever I can, and I've got to-do lists in every part of my life. So I've got to-do list personally. I even have a list of all the restaurants I want to go to and all the things I want to do, and the countries I want to go to, and the hotels I want to stay in. But also from a daily point of view, I break my task list down into sort of today's to-do list and maybe this month's or this year's. So I have clear goals. I mean, using the word to-do list I think is a little bit harsh, and it can be a bit draining. You think, I've got to do that. Whereas perhaps having a year's goal list or a goal plan, or having today's priorities, kind of try and avoid the to-do list, because I think that can feel really onerous. I use my tasks in my phone that links into my Outlook. I use my notes as well in my phone that then also links to Outlook. And I use my diary to schedule times where I need to do a certain job. So everyone in my team as well knows that I'm busy doing something or other, so that they can either divert calls or reschedule certain things around my time as well. And it works. I think you've just got to be a bit strict with your time frame. That's the same with my personal training. Because it's in my diary, there's no flexibility there. I won't change it for meetings, because that's so much an important part of my work as it is for my sort of my focus and my health. So I leave that as an absolute, important meeting.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about the health, keeping healthy thing. I mean, scheduling in exercise sort of tells me that you've got some focus on that already. Are there other things that you're doing around how you look after yourself, your sleep, your energy, your nutrition, that sort of thing?
Yeah, again, back in corporate world, I think you just work in a very cutthroat environment where you kind of eat to live and you work to live as well. And there's not a lot of living in that situation. So following on from that, when I went to a sort of non-structured environment of being more consultancy and doing a little bit of work, I started to eat at ad hoc times of the day. I was overeating, put on weight, and sort of neglected my health and my body. And then now I've got to that full circle. I'm back to, okay, I work full time, I'm disciplined and dedicated, but something switched for me in the last year where I had to really, really look inside myself and deal with my own self before I could take my business any way further in any event, and looked at my health, my diet, my weight, managed to lose some weight, and really focused this year on sort of mindfulness and stepping back from work and saying, okay, my health is just as important as my work, because it effectively has a knock-on effect on what I do and how I work. And my job's very taxing, for want of a better cliche.
Pun intended.
Exactly, so definitely. And so mentally, I used to suffer with a lot of brain fog and kind of confusion if my diet was poor. And I found that if I changed my way of eating and my patterns in eating, my diet and my whole kind of exercise regime, that I've managed to eliminate that kind of the negatives of that. So I'm a bit of a low carb girl, a bit of a high protein and veg, and I know what works for me. I know what doesn't work for me, and my weakness right now is a bit of coffee gelato, and then I'm in real trouble because I'll eat the whole pot. So I'm certainly not perfect, and I certainly have the odd bad day. But I've got to that stage now where I know what's working for me, and I think it's key for me to get the best performance out of my job and my work that I have to eat sensibly. And that's the difficulty when you work from home. You can end up eating erratically and not exercising because you've got up in your gym jams and you kind of have a coffee, grab a bit of toast, and then you have something at 11 o'clock, and then you eat at 3 o'clock instead of having a dedicated lunch.
Yeah.
And I think you can be really in danger of sort of slipping into, it not being as productive as it could be.
And it's that whole not getting out of the house thing as well. That's the one thing that I have to try and schedule things I need to do, like go to the post office or go to the bank, just to actually force myself to go for the walk, even though I love it when I'm out there and I listen to my podcasts and everything else. I always have other things I could be doing, and it makes it hard to sort of tear myself away. You said earlier on in that section something switched for you in the last year. Was there something that particularly made that happen, and can you identify what that was, or have you just sort of benefited?
I can. I mean, for me in tax, it's very much it's really very mentally demanding job, and January is always inevitably our worst time of year. We get to the 31st of January, and obviously trying to get to the filing deadline, it's almost like you hit a brick wall, and your energy levels, everything, mentally you're exhausted. And for me, I'd really hit that brick wall where I think my relationship was starting to suffer. Everything was suffering because I was just working so hard.
Yeah.
And I realised that my health was suffering because of the stress levels of work. And I knew that I couldn't really change my work, but what I could do was change myself and how I adapted to stress. And something just switched, and I got a personal trainer in February earlier this year who was a bit of a coach as well as a personal trainer, and I was like, right, I need to get in shape. I needed to change my mindset, but I wasn't sure how or what. So I started to sort of just teach myself techniques of just 10 minutes of calm a day, or more breathing, or all the things I kind of knew at the back of my mind I should be doing. I actually started to implement them. I thought, okay, I need to change, and little by little, I am where I am now. I'm able to be fit and healthy and do my job and a hell of a lot better. I won't say I'm looking forward to January, but I think I'll be able to cope with it better this year.
Yeah, and as you say, it's that bit about once you start to see some results, whatever those results may be, with the things that you're doing, it's much easier to continue with them, isn't it?
Sure, you can't. It's just a roller coaster, so to speak. You just start unhealthy eating and you start to feel good. You start to take your vitamin Bs. You feel amazing. You've got all this energy. And then if you go and have a white bread sandwich, you're like, oh, I feel rotten. So you lose habits really quickly if you have the right mindset. So if you have a positive mindset, I think you have to have an end goal. My end goal was, right, I've got to feel mentally healthy. I've got to feel good about myself. I've got to feel happy. So all those things that were creating a little bit of a negative feeling, I was like, they've got to go. There's kind of a big line through. And it's just forming habits. And I don't think you need to work with a million psychologists to do it. I think you just have to be really conscious of habits that you've formed, and the ones that make you feel positive and the ones that make you feel negative, if that makes sense.
I was reading something the other day, I think it's from the book The One Thing, and it was talking about how habits are formed through sort of little pockets of self-discipline. People sort of think that successful people are like really disciplined 24/7 sort of thing, and it was making the point that isn't necessarily the case. It's just about having enough discipline to do that one thing, and to do that one thing on a regular basis to the point it then becomes a habit, and then you don't need the self-discipline because you just do it, and then you use the discipline for something else sort of thing, which I thought was really interesting.
I think that's really true, because I'm a very creative person at heart, and I'm not what people would assume of accountants as being left brain. I'm actually not, and I'm very kind of flippant and flamboyant, and so it's kind of strange to me to have such discipline, but it isn't. It's a discipline that forms a habit, and then once you've got the habit, it just becomes part of your life, and you can do things easier with more clarity. You can almost like you can churn work out better because your brain's in the right place, you're in the right mindset, rather than it feeling like a chore. Whereas I think if you're doing it without that sort of mindset or without forming the habit, things can become a chore and effort, if that makes sense.
It's interesting you say that, because people, I think, would quite often think that I don't do detail, for example, for very much the same reason you just said, which is that sort of outgoing, I can be quite flippant too, but that, real sort of
smiley, happy, flippant, just, enjoy yourself type style. And yes, I am very much about detail, to the point of sadness, particularly around getting organised and things like that. But as you say, that isn't the same as that sort of personality that people would see. So it's interesting that you say that, because I think in some ways by creating those, as you say, that discipline, those habits and that detail of stuff happening, it frees you up to have that more sort of flamboyant lifestyle. Never quite sort of sounds quite what I mean, but
no, that's exactly the thing. It does create. It gives you the energy to be yourself and have your personality, shine and be the person you want to be, rather than having to focus on things that don't come naturally to you. So, I mean, I like if I'm sitting with, I won't lie, if I'm sitting with one of the guys in the office and they've read some legislation that they think's really exciting, and they're reading it, and I go, just tell me what it means. Just kind of get to the chase. Tell me what you're trying to tell me. Tell me it quickly. I don't have time in my brain or to engage and listen to all the small bit. And I'm a bit like that with tax legislation. It doesn't excite me reading all the kind of small print and the different sections and so on. Yeah. What comes naturally to me is the kind of, let's get to the point. Can you do it this way? Can you do it that way? If not, great, move on. I won't then divulge into the kind of legislation and look at the small print. And I think some people get off on that, but that's just not me.
I know exactly what you mean. My husband tries to explain things to me. He's an Oracle developer, so he's quite sort of, techie and what sort of thing, and he'll start explaining things, and I'll be going, I don't need all the explanation, just tell me what I need to do.
Just tell me, yes. Can I do this? And my clients are like that with me. They don't want to know what piece of legislation affects them. I don't care section numbers. They go, Faye, just tell me what to do. Yeah. And, just give me the advice that I need. And that's what they want to hear as well. So, which is probably why I get on quite well with most of my clients, I hope. Is because I have that same sort of mindset. I don't want to, concentrate too much on the detail. I want to focus on what gets the results and what's important.
Yeah, cool. So you talked about mindfulness, and you've already talked about spending some time thinking about breathing during the day to sort of, calm things down. What else do you do to relax? It's, I guess, something that you probably think about, from what you've told me already. Yeah,
sometimes I don't get to relax, but generally speaking, weight training for me, my 2 personal training sessions, as much as it's really tough, at the moment I'm deadlifting 80 kilos and I'm working towards 100, and that's really tough, and it's really tough on your body, but it's also really amazing on your mind, because you cannot think of anything else. You're in the zone where you're just pushing your body to its limits, and even though it's not physically relaxing, it's mentally relaxing, because your brain can't think about anything else, and you just switch off. And I just do as I'm told. And he says to me, do this, and I just do it. And so that's really relaxing. I also sing, and
so
singing lessons. Do you? Oh, great.
That's my relaxation. When you were saying switch off, I don't know what sort of singing you do. I do choral singing, and I will say you can't think of anything other than what you're doing when you're singing.
Exactly. And you're singing, and also you're engaging your breathing. There's, you've got to get deep into your breath. There's a lot of focus, and you're thinking about the words, you're thinking about the sound, you're thinking about the vowels and everything when you're singing. Again, there's no place to think of anything else. And also it's so deeply relaxing and enjoyable if you make a nice sound. It's a good feeling, even if you're singing in the bath. I mean, I have lessons, but it's a good feeling, I think, to sing. I think that's incredibly relaxing. And when I play my music in the house, it has to be full on. It will be so loud, so I can sing along to it and not be heard. Yeah. And I find that relaxing. So I probably, although the mindfulness is subconsciously there, I'm conscious that my mind has the power to make its choices. I don't like silence. And I don't like quiet tranquility and stillness. So for me, relaxation needs to be something where my brain switches off, but where I'm still active.
Absolutely. That's why I'm struggling with the concept of meditation, and why I don't want to do yoga, even though I know they ought to be things that I'm doing.
Well, they both freaks me out, actually. Yoga, I find, kind of looking around the room, okay, what's next? Where do I put my leg now? And I can't concentrate. I can't get into the zone, and I don't have a zen within me that kind of wants to zen into the yoga. And I find meditation a bit strange and a bit alien. Someone once said to me today, maybe you should meditate, and that just freaked me out. I thought, I'm going to start sort of singing phrases out. That's just going to that freaks me out. But actually meditation can be anything. It could be throwing a tennis ball against the wall and catching it repetitively. And that's quite meditative. And that would be more my meditation, is doing something repetitively, or a jigsaw puzzle where you're just focused on something small and something specific. I guess that's what meditation is.
Yeah, exactly. So what about learning and improving yourself? You sound like you're sort of on the lookout for these things, the sort of things that you're telling me sound like the sort of things that I research as well. So I guess you're probably reading and trying to find things out on a regular basis. What do you do to improve?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very open-minded, so you can give me... I want to learn anything new. I like the idea of stretching my brain, not in terms of more education, but more knowledge and power and more... And I think it helps to improve strength of character and kind of your own emotional intelligence. So that's probably more important. And I don't read a book and go, right, that's it, I'm going to follow that rule. I tend to absorb things when I don't realise them, and then amalgamate all my own different rules that I've created from all these different sources and learn from bits in piecemeal, if that makes any sense. And inspiration-wise as well, if I'm inspired by somebody's story, whether it's a sports person, an artist, whatever it might be, I will take something from that, probably subconsciously, and develop off the back of that. So for me, it's inspiration. If I'm inspired by something, someone, even Pinterest. I mean, I'm learning. I love Pinterest. It's my obsession, actually, because I create a mood board and all the things that inspire me. But actually, I learn from that as well. I learn, visually, I'm learning things. But I think everything you learn from, if you just open your mind to it.
So what about particular books or films, or you mentioned music? Do you have any that you'd recommend for the listeners?
Well, I'm a bit of a fantasist, so I don't read anything academic or intelligent. I'm a bit creative, so for me it's imaginative stories or action, romance, comedy, anything like that. I very rarely read unless it's the occasional business book. One book I read not so long ago was More Balls Than Most. I think
that's Laura Morgan, isn't it?
Laura Morgan, brilliant. I loved it. I loved her balls, loved her attitude. Not many books would I read. I've got the Sheryl Sandberg Lean In on my iPad. I keep threatening to read it, but it's a lot of effort to read a book. But I've heard so many good things, and I want to read like that. But for me, I'd rather turn the music up loud in my downtime. I like country music, so I'd turn it up as loud as I can and just get into my zone. But if I do go on holiday, that's the time when I read a book. I'll read sort of a Grisham, or something, other crime thriller or something like that. Because I think there's a lot of learning to be done there. You learn about legal systems, albeit a lot of them in the US, but you learn a lot from books. And also I might read business books. But I would say nothing springs to mind as being something I would recommend other than losing yourself in whatever it is that you enjoy. Yeah. So the music and film. I mean, when I watch film, it's very visual for me. I just sit and switch off, and I get engrossed in something because I'm not having to think or do. Whereas reading a book, I'm thinking and doing, and that strikes me as effort.
Yeah, I can see that. I do lots of reading, and I do spend time making notes, thinking, that would be good for my newsletter, and going off to Evernote to make a note about what it was I read. And as you say, that then creates a bit of work out of that pleasure. I don't do that when I'm reading storybooks, though.
Yeah, I used to write music when I was younger, and there was something kind of really exciting about that. You kind of take things you're inspired by something, and you just write words down or poems. And I mean, they're all rubbish, but it's that you learn from things, you absorb things, and then you get it on paper or you sing it or hum it, whatever it is. I guess that's how I learn.
Yeah. So on the further topic of recommendations, we talked about some of the tools that you used, Outlook and the notes and the tasks. Are there any other tools or apps that you'd recommend?
Yeah, we use, in the office we use something called Salesforce, which is an online platform. It's actually a sales sort of CRM platform, and we use it as our central database, and it is online-based. So all of our softwares that we use are online-based, or web-based, so that we can have access anywhere, and that means that it gives us me and the rest of the staff, the opportunity to work from home or elsewhere at any time.
with sort of instant access. Now, at Salesforce, I can get on my phone. I've got instant data on it, so I really love it as an app if you're using. So whether it's Salesforce or something equally similar that has sort of your business data at fingertip, because there's nothing worse than you're out and about and you need something really quickly on a phone and you can't get access to it, about a client. Pinterest is my other one, as I said, because there's a lot of visual release there, and it kind of gives me a lot of inspiration, goals, even down to recipes. I think, oh God, that looks really good, I want to cook that. Or pictures of people in the gym and think, I want to do those, I want to do that, or something. So Pinterest is a very good app for me because it clears my mind and gets all my ideas out there visually. Yeah. So we have a tax app that we use, and we've got our own one, which gives us all the tax rates. So for me and my job, I need that always. So if I'm out with a client and we want to look at different rates of tax for different things, at least I can refer back to that. That's pretty essential for what I do. And Rightmove is my other favourite app because that gives me the inspiration. I love property and I love architecture, and it just gives me the inspiration to want to achieve more and get a bigger house, and kind of it helps me kind of focus in it's almost like looking at my dream houses. Yes. And that kind of helps wire me and gets me working towards goals.
It's interesting. People do share houses on Rightmove sometimes on Facebook, and I hadn't really thought about it before, because there are people who I know aren't looking to move, or they're sharing houses that aren't anywhere near where they are based. And now you say that, I guess they must be looking at it, as you say, for inspiration and just sometimes nosiness. And that's where it's coming from. I hadn't even thought about that. Oh, you're just opening up a whole new realm for me.
Well, I think there's a fine line between being what could be perceived as being envious of somebody else's home, which I would say I'm not, but it's more about I love that. Right, that's it. I want to work really hard because I love that home. I love the idea of that fountain in the hallway or whatever it might be. Yeah. And so my mind goes into this, okay, well, what do I have to achieve in life to get a fountain in the hallway? And rather than I want what they've got and feeling bitter about it, it's really about, gets me quite excited. I think, okay, I really want something like that. I want a garden that size, or I want, and it's not just because it's, so therefore work is not driving me, or money's not driving me to work so much, but there is still, a goal of like, I want a bigger house, nicer house. I want something. I'm quite tactile. I want things. I want touchable things. I want tangible things. So I'm a bit of a child like that, and I'm a bit of a dreamer as well. Yeah. But I think there's no harm in that.
Yeah, I never often check out that site myself. Yeah. So we talked at the beginning about a morning routine. Do you have an evening routine? You talk about work finishes full stop, which clearly is beginning of the evening. Do you then do certain things as far as sort of calming down for ready to sleep and that sort of thing, or is it just whatever happens that evening?
Slightly. I'm slightly a bit mishmash in my evenings. If I want to eat out, I'll eat out. If I want to eat in, I'll eat in. If I don't want to eat, I won't eat. So it's very much how I feel. But when I do get home, the phone kind of goes upside down on the hall room table. I mean, I check it occasionally because it's my work and my personal phone are the same. I couldn't deal with two phones. So I do, just kind of look at it. But I won't look at my emails because my emails will only ever be work-related. But I'll check my texts or whatever. I've also got a kitten, so I love to come home to my little kitten. He gives me a lot of pleasure. I guess that home for me is downtime, so whatever that might be, whether that's a bath or whether that's watching TV and to a point where I go to like a zombie. I have certain rules. I won't put my mobile phone on charge in my bedroom, and I don't have a TV in my bedroom because I think the bedroom and sleeping is for two things, the bedroom. We'll leave it at that. And so I like that to be a zen. So it's a very, very neutral zen. I even have my majority of my clothes in another room. It's a very tranquil space so that when I go to bed, I'm in that zone. Yeah. And then when I'm in the lounge, it's a TV room. And we don't eat in the lounge, for example. I prefer to eat at the table. So I guess there's slightly discipline, but they're subconscious disciplines, and they're just the way I live my life and the way I like to live. So things become quite separate So eating is a meal time. We sit and have dinner at the dining table. Watching TV, watching a film is in the lounge, in comfort, lights down, candles on, and bed is bed. And I do try to not look at internet or the computer, the phone too close to bedtime. I think it is quite distracting.
Yeah.
I used to have a Sudoku habit, and also the other one with the Candy Crush on the phone, and I used to do that before bed. Oh, it's awful, because in the middle of the night you find your head's moving, red bits, yellow bits, and you're kind of moving these pieces around your head laying in bed and thinking, oh my God, this has got to stop. So I went through real cold turkey having to get rid of the Candy Crush phase. And so now now it's a total computer light-free zone.
Lovely. So what about if things don't go right for you during the day? What happens then? How do you deal with those sort of less good times?
And I think simply I would just start the next day as a separate one, as a new day. I tend to not dwell on what's happened yesterday. I tend to just deal with it. Okay, that was yesterday. There's nothing I can do about that. So tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow I'll be great. It might be diet. It might be I haven't got stuff done. Whatever it might be, there's always things at the end of the day. I think today was really not, a great day. Just make the next day count. Make the next day a better day.
Yeah.
And I tend to live by that. So, yeah. Yeah,
I like that. I think because sometimes as well, it's just sort of acknowledging that it was a bit rubbish and that isn't going to carry on. So.
And that's
it's
okay.
In the past sort of thing. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the rest of your life's going to be rubbish. It's just a bad day, and you just have to go, it's fine. I'm like everybody else that's just having a bad day. It's perfectly acceptable that this went wrong. I cried, or this happened, or whatever it might be. Just move on the next day. Just a fresh pair of eyes will see things. And sleep always helps.
Yeah.
Sleep it off, and then the next day you see things with clarity. Same as when you're working on a project and it's not going right, just stop, walk away from it, and then come back to it later or the next day, because you'll make yourself ill trying to do something that your brain's not in the mindset of. And I used to do it. I used to get in a panic and get very stressed out and very sort of almost hyperventilating about a job that I need to get done. It's very urgent. It has to be done right now. And then that was, again, when my mindfulness came in. I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm punishing myself. Nobody else is doing this to me. It's me doing it to myself. And I think you just have to learn to go, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay, I can't deal with it now, or it's gone wrong. Okay, tomorrow I'll correct it. I'll sort it out. So it's quite pragmatic.
Yeah. So on a day when you do end the day knowing you've had the chance to live more, and that's when I talk about you doing the things you want to do, not the things that you have to do or that you feel that you should do. What have you done? What's that day look like?
I've probably ticked off something on my to-do list, on one of them, whether it's my goal list or my dream list. If I know that, if I've sort of punched the air and it's one of those, yes, I've just done it today, I've probably finished something practical. It might have been, we've ended at a HMRC inquiry, it might be work-related, so I've got a closing letter from an inquiry, and I feel really good about that from the point of view of the clients. There's no more hassle. Or it may be that I have just seen or done something that I really wanted to do and that I've enjoyed it, or it could be I've painted the lounge that I said I've been wanting to do for weeks. It's normally a tick in the box. If I know that I can almost cross something out, tick the box or delete it, then that for me is a good day.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we've come to the end of the interview. It's been really enjoyable and interesting how many things we had similar sort of views and experiences with.
Thank you.
So it's been really enjoyable speaking to you, Faye. So how can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Well, I'm on Twitter. That's another one of my favourite apps, which I do actually dip in and out of, but I am there, at Tax and Tea. And strangely enough, I don't like tea, so I don't know how that came about. I have a huge collection of vintage china teacups, so that's where the sort of the tea element came in.
Yeah.
My firm is Fuse Accountants, and I'm a partner there. And I'm now building my own website, which is faywatts.com, and that will feature lots of sort of different articles that I'm writing. I've just interviewed an IFA, trying to do a bit of a profile on women in finance as well. So I can be found also on LinkedIn. So,
Brilliant.
Anyone's welcome to connect with me.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jo.
Jo's Gems.
This is the part of the show where I do a recap of the key points of the interview, the stuff that I really liked, and the apps, books, music, tips and tools that were shared. This is for you if you heard something that you want to check out but you couldn't write it down at the time. Hopefully I've got you covered. And this is the bit for the really time-pressed. You can just listen here and get the gems from the interview. But of course I wouldn't suggest you do that and miss out on the great conversation that I had with Faye. So when we were talking about tools and apps, Faye mentioned that they use Salesforce within their office. It's a CRM and sales platform. She said all the software that they use is online-based and web-based so that they can have access anywhere. And that means that Faye can get access to any information when she's out of the office, as can the rest of the staff, so they can have the opportunity to work from home or anywhere else with the access to the data. The other website that she talked about is Rightmove. She says she uses that for inspiration. She likes property and really loves architecture, and it gives her inspiration to set goals to achieve more, to perhaps get a bigger house or something she's seen in one of the houses. She talked about a fountain in the entranceway, but she says it helps her focus. It's like looking at her dream houses and helping her to think about her goals and how she's going to motivate herself to work towards them. We mentioned 2 books. One is More Balls Than Most by Lara Morgan, which I thoroughly recommend too, and Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Faye says that she really likes country music. She says, for me, I'd rather turn the music up loud in my downtime. I like country music, so I turn that up as loud as I can and just get into my zone. In this interview, we really focused on lots of tips. So probably less websites and apps and so on, but much more about how you go about doing things and how Faye sort of runs her life. So she talked initially about how important it is to stick to a routine. She said that she has to stick to a routine because she's rubbish otherwise. If she doesn't keep on track. So she schedules everything that she does, and she has certain routines in the morning for things like catching up on emails. And she always makes sure before lunch that she works on one job to get it out of the door. And she said that might be a client's tax return or some accounting or some advice or whatever. Basically, either things that are fee earning or leading towards fee earning work. I really like that idea of just sort of getting one thing done that's sort of one of those big jobs that you may put off otherwise, and getting that sort of out the door before lunchtime. Something that Faye does that I also do is to schedule telephone calls, including those with clients. She says she tends to schedule them in if they want to discuss something in detail rather than getting into the habit of allowing phone calls to interrupt her day, because then you lose momentum with whatever else that you're doing. Faye said about minimising distractions, especially when working at home. She said she doesn't like distractions when she is doing that, and that if you're working, it's important to use that time to work and not to do things, like put on washing in the middle of what you're doing, or decide to do something else in the middle of some of the work that you're doing. She says she thinks it's, you're working and that's what you need to do no matter where you are, so that you have that sort of dedicated time to get done what you need to get done. She's very clear about what's work and what isn't, and how she switches between the two. And she says when she goes home, that's it, time out. But she also talks about having a personal trainer that she trains with during the working time. So she has a slot at 9 o'clock on a Friday and 5 o'clock on a Monday. And she says that she really puts that into the working hours because they're a disciplined time of her day, and there's something that she then can't reschedule, but also they don't creep into the evening. So she does have the evenings free at home, and has very much that differentiation between work and home life. She talked about planning and goal setting being essential, on that she diarises everything, and she said she's got to-do lists for everything. So she's got personal to-do lists of restaurants she wants to go to and countries she wants to visit and so on. She says that enables her then to break down her tasks into today's to-do list and maybe this month's or this year's, that she has those clear goals. Although she did comment that using the word to-do list can be a bit harsh and maybe a bit off-putting, so puts a bit of emphasis on getting things done. So she says perhaps having a goal list or a plan or priorities for the day perhaps makes it sound a bit less onerous. There's quite a lot of a theme in this interview around self-care and how that's a key to business success. So Faye said that she looked at her health and her diet and her weight and really focused this year on mindfulness and stepping back from work and focusing on her health being as important as her work because of the knock-on effect that it has on what she does. She says her job is, to use her pun, very taxing. But she said that, January is a really tough time for accountancies, and she feels much more, or felt much more equipped for this January that's just gone. We did the interview before Christmas, so she felt much more equipped to get through that really busy time with the way that she'd been looking after herself and her health last year. And following on from that, we talked about eating healthily, and Faye said that she used to get a lot of brain fog and confusion if she wasn't eating well, and she's actually really changed how she eats, and she can tell when she's eaten well, and she can tell where she's not eating so well. It really has an impact on her health and her ability to focus. So she says she knows what works for her and what doesn't work for her, and then she tries to sort of follow that. She says she's a low carb girl with a bit of high protein and veg. We talked quite a bit about habits, and she talked about working on improving habits, and that you can lose bad habits really quickly if you have the right mindset and focus on dropping them, and the same when you're trying to form them. And she said she's not usually that disciplined, so to focus on creating those habits as she has done feels quite strange for her, but she says once she's got the habit in place, then it just becomes part of your life. And it reminded me of a comment that I'd read in the book, I think The One Thing, and it was talking about how habits are formed with little bits of self-discipline, and you just need to keep doing those little pieces of self-discipline over and again to get the habit to stick. And once the habit sticks, that need to use your self-discipline goes away, and obviously you can use that to focus on creating a different habit, or to be disciplined to do something else. We talked about doing meditative things for mindfulness, and this was one of the areas that we quite agreed on, in that Faye doesn't really like the idea of doing actual meditation or something like yoga, but she does see the real importance of being meditative and the whole mindfulness piece. And she mentioned a couple of things that she does. One of them is that she's doing weightlifting, so deadlifts, and she says it's really amazing on your mind because you can't think of anything else. You get into a zone where you're just pushing your body to its limits, so even though it's not physically relaxing, it's very mentally relaxing. And she also then talked about singing, which I do as well, where she said you're so focused about the words and about the sounds and about how you sound when you're singing that there's no time, or rather no opportunity, to think of anything else. And of course then you've also got the add-on effect of the deep breathing that you need to do to be able to sing effectively, which can physically really help you as well. Faye says she wants to learn anything new. She likes the idea of stretching her brain, not necessarily about more education, but she said she thinks it helps to improve your strength of character and your emotional intelligence, and that's sort of probably more important than actually accumulating knowledge. She says that when she gets home from work, she puts her phone upside down on the whole room table. She might check it occasionally because her emails from work are coming through to it, but in the main she doesn't look at them. She uses texting personally, and other than that she just leaves the phone away from her so that she doesn't spend the evening looking at it when she could be doing other more relaxing things. She said she's got a kitten, so she likes to come home to see her kitten, and he gives her a lot of pleasure and helps to keep her calm. And then finally she talked about having rules, where she's saying she doesn't have the mobile phone on charge in her bedroom, and she doesn't have a TV in there, and when it's time to eat they're in the dining room, if it's time for watching telly they're in the lounge, and there's very sort of demarcated sections of the house for different activities, and that really helps to create a really nice environment and sort of manage her time in those different zones, I guess. And then we talked about websites, and the website that Faye mentioned, other than Rightmove, which I mentioned already, was Pinterest. And she said she really loves Pinterest. It's her obsession. She likes to create a mood board and pull together all the things that inspire her. And she learns from it as well. She said she's visually learning things when she's actually using the website. And finally, to contact Faye, you can follow her on Twitter, which is @taxandtea. You can go to the company website, Fuse Accountants, or a new site that Faye set up for herself, which is faywatts.com, or you can also find her on LinkedIn. As ever, all the links to these show notes are on the webpage. If you just go to powertolivemore.com/13, it'll take you straight to the show notes for Faye.
Use your power to live more.
As ever, all this information is available on the show notes on the website, powertolivemore.com/13 in this case. And if you'd like to sign up to get my weekly newsletter with more tips, strategies, ideas and tools to improve your power, you can do that on the website too. And if you go to powertolivemore.com/focus, you can download my Increase Your Focus for Better Productivity report for free, and then you'll get onto the mailing list that way. Again, the link for this show is powertolivemore.com/13, and we look forward to speaking to you next time.